Hi, everyone. I'm Julie, host for this room and club. And just as we're getting started, like I've said, you can ping people into this room that you think may be interested by using the plus sign at the bottom. You can narrow your search. Be mindful of how many people you ping. Be sure to follow me, all our moderators and panelists here today. You'll want to check out new people in the room as well, so be sure to do that. We do encourage our audience to raise their digital hand and participate. We will do our best to get to everyone. Please note, our club is called Consuli Conversations, and in addition to this room, we host a long COVID and a clinical trials room. You can learn more by following our club, Consuli Conversations. Just tap the little green house at the top, give us a follow, check out all our upcoming rooms for the next few months in the bio there. And for any direct questions, comments, feedback, suggestions, if you or someone you know would be great for this panel, send me an email. I love hearing from you guys, so anything you want to share is great. Please follow us on social medias. You'll find the links in my bio. And for those that don't yet know Consuli, broadly, Consuli is a public benefit company with a mission to enable individuals to participate in the data economy. Experts do suggest our individual data is worth about $20,000 per year. So we help people choose who gets access to and how their personal information is used, and if and when get them paid for their data and make medicine better. We do this by operating a marketplace for members where we become their agent, and our members receive smart-matched, individualized offers from us for opportunities including to participate in clinical trials and data trials. There's no cost to join our movement, and you can learn more at consuli.net. That's consuli.net. It is now my pleasure to turn the floor over to our room moderator, Elizabeth Dreicer, who is a philanthropist, activist, and co-founder and CEO of Consuli. Elizabeth will be introducing our distinguished panelists and guests. Elizabeth, now over to you.
Thanks so much, Julie. And as always, thanks for your help in making this event possible. Also, I want to give acknowledgement to Spencer, who also has been instrumental in making this room possible. Welcome. We're happy to host and facilitate this room and this important discussion. Also, just a reminder that we're also hosting a public virtual whiteboard, and you can see the link in both my bio as well as Julie's. And then if Julie is able to pin that at some point at the top of the room. And this is an invitation. You'll see that it's a constellation of lots of interaction with people that are on the panel as well as audience members over, almost we're nearing a year. So it's a lot of interaction, a lot of input, and we're really learning and getting better at understanding both what's happening and also what we want to see happen through these discussions as we really tease out the deceptively simple aspects of what we're discussing here, right? It seems very obvious, but sort of unraveling it, as we all know, lots of different facets. So with that, and without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest panelists. And first up, I'll introduce Spencer Gurley. Spencer is a recent computer science grad from the University of California, Santa Cruz, with a focus on ethical algorithms, fairness, and bias within machine learning and artificial intelligence, as well as the social implications of tech. As an undergrad, he was instrumental in the creation of the Center for Applied Values and Ethics in Advanced Technologies, as well as establishing a curricula for the course Ethics and Algorithms. Spencer is a member of our team, and in partnership with others, he's helping stand up the Data Dignity Alliance. I am turning the mic to Spencer for his opening remarks now. This is Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking for now.
Hi, everyone. It's Spencer. Thanks for making the event today. I'm super excited to host this conversation and see what ideas come up this time around. I'm Spencer, and I'm done speaking.
Okay, definitely. You got the brevity memo. All right. Next up is Lisa Berkley. Dr. Lisa Berkley is the co-founder and co-director of the Center for Applied Values and Ethics in Advancing Technologies, or CAVIAT, at the Crown College at the University of California, Santa Cruz. She is a futurist committed to the care and well-being of the earth and all her animate and inanimate beings, especially humans. Lisa has developed the Compassionate Governance Index and has lived on 4 continents working as an educator, advisor, and consultant within the international peace and security sector. Lisa, we're delighted to have you. The mic is yours. This is Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking for now.
My goodness, thank you so much for that introduction. And I think you pretty much gave the background from my perspective. I'm very much looking forward to our conversation today and very happy to be here with Linda MacDonald Glenn, who is my partner in, I would say partner in crime, but it's not a crime. It's a partner in transformation and disrupting outdated systems. Thank you, and I'm done.
Thank you so much. Well, we'll be doing another round robin to get input on what we're bringing into today's conversation. But next up, without further ado, Linda MacDonald Glenn. Linda is the founding director of the Center for Applied Values and Ethics and Advanced Technologies, caveat, at Crown College, also at the University of California, Santa Cruz. She is a recovering attorney and also an ethicist, futurist, educator, and advisor with over 30 years of experience in a variety of sectors, including exponential technology, healthcare, government, education, business ethics, and futures forecasting. I'm turning the mic to Linda now for her opening remarks. This is Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking for now.
Hi, everyone. Elizabeth, thank you for that great introduction. It's such an honor to be here. I'm so pleased to be able to be part of this conversation. I, I'm interested in all aspects of this, but my particular interest is in how do we create rights? How do we how do we create rights in personal data? Does it need to be via legislation, other methodologies, or some sort of framework? But it's been exciting and really an honor to be a part of this conversation. Thank you. And this is Linda, and I'm done speaking.
Okay, thanks so much, Linda. And next up, Vinay Narayan. Hopefully, Vinay, I didn't butcher your last name. That said, Vinay is a senior research associate at Aapti Institute. He's a lawyer by training, interested in models that allow people and communities to exercise better control over their data. At Aapti, Vinay is looking at various models of data stewardship that enable this, with a special focus on agriculture and climate-focused data stewardship. Vinay, we're delighted to have you. I'm turning the mic over to you for your opening remarks. This is Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking for now.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And no, you didn't do too bad a job of pronouncing my last name. It's pronounced Narayan, but that's perfectly fine. Vinay is just good enough. Thank you for that introduction. I'm Vinay. I am a senior research associate at Aapti. At Aapti, we are looking at various questions of data stewardship, which is a framework of governance that we believe can responsibly unlock data for social good while safeguarding the rights of individuals and communities. As Elizabeth mentioned, I personally have been involved with data stewardship within the areas of agriculture and climate change. But at Aapti, we're also looking very seriously at health data stewardship, and I am super excited to be a part of this conversation today. I'm done speaking for now. Back to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Vinay. Okay, so next up, I think we have Manuel and Coichy. Manuel is a systems architect with a lifelong research interest and focus in the design space of intelligence amplification. Really am looking forward to hearing about this. I'm turning the mic over to Manuel for his opening remarks. This is Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking for now.
Hello, hello Elizabeth, and hello everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Manuel. I've literally been exploring IA for, I guess, about plus 30 years now, and yeah, and right now I'm focused on primarily law enforcement and public safety. I can talk about the technology and with certain limits and really contribute to the discussion. Cheers.
Thanks so much, Manuel. Next up is Terrence Craig. Terrence is a high impact executive, technologist, entrepreneur, and advisor for early stage companies across various industry verticals. He has broad experience in all aspects of running, investing, and advising startups with deep expertise in big data analytics, digital privacy, software as a service, artificial intelligence, fintech, digital health, medical devices, etc. He has dedicated himself to building a more welcoming startup ecosystem for women and BIPOC members by mentoring entrepreneurs across the country, advising organizations like the Investors of Color, Astia, and Toyota Ventures, and heavily investing in teams led by women, BIPOC, or both. With that, Terrence, we're really glad to have you. Turning the mic over to you for your opening remarks. This is Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Appreciate it. And good morning and Happy New Year to everyone. I'm happy to be here. My focus on privacy is really a focus on what can we do to make sort of the data economy more equitable and see the economic benefits and the social benefits spread more evenly. And also, how can we do harm reduction and make sure that our digital data isn't used in ways that are extractive or inimical to our interest or society's interest. Really looking forward to the conversation, and I'm done speaking.
Okay, thanks so much. And next up, I'm really pleased to introduce Christine von Raesfeld. Christine is the founder and CEO of People with Empathy. She is a leader in bringing a critically needed patient perspective to cutting edge medical innovations. She's committed to providing patients with chronic and rare disease with the support they need. Christine works with patient advocacy organizations, industry representatives, and individual patients and their loved ones. Living herself with many rare and chronic diseases, she believes that the only way to ensure health equity is to leverage one's own data. I am turning the mic to Christine for her opening remarks. This is Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking for now.
Thank you, Elizabeth. This is Christine, and I am so happy to be here. Just over the past few years as a patient, I've grown up in Silicon Valley, and I realized the importance of our data and really realized the importance of that collective data and really using that in this data-driven economy to kind of even the playing field for those of us who can't work and things like that. So really just excited to be here and to give my perspective. So thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Christine. And next up is Heather Openshaw. Heather is currently pursuing an MBA and MPA at Presidio Graduate School, where she focuses her research on de-radicalization and ethical technology. She works in marketing and communications and is passionate about using her skills to communicate complex subjects to everyday audiences, to increase digital literacy and decrease the digital divide. Heather, we're very happy to have you. Welcome to the show. Turning the mic to you for your opening remarks. This is Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking for now.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you so much. This is Heather speaking. I'm really honored to be here today. As Elizabeth mentioned, my passion is around being able to communicate complex subjects or even what we may not see in this room as complex, but subjects like data dignity to your general population. So making sure that this information is accessible is my passion. And I'm done speaking. Thank you.
Next up, we have Gavin Campbell. Gavin is a futurologist specializing in instance. He is working with a project called Super Reality, an open source XR education platform. Looking forward to learning about this. I'm turning the mic over to Gavin for his opening remarks. This is Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking for now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction. And yeah, just looking forward to what emerges from this conversation. So, really honored to be here. Thank you.
We're really glad to have you on the show. So I know we have a number of folks that have been with us before. We have a number of folks that are with us for the very first time. Um, and I'd like to open this up for those that have been with us before. You know that this, can take many different corridors and usually is deeply informed by who's here and who's with us. So I'd like to, though, begin and just open up, if the core question for each of you is, if you had your druthers and you could, set the, policy for what data dignity ought to look like, how we properly integrate this into our world, what does that look like? And I'll just go back in order, if that's okay, as I see you guys on my screen. Linda, I'd love to turn the mic to you first. If you could have it your way, what would that look like?
So I think we've certainly discussed some of this before. You know what? I have a poor connection, Elizabeth. I'm going to see if I can find a stronger connection. So if you don't mind, let me can you
Sure,
circle back?
of course.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. We'll go on to, so same question for the panel. And Vinay, may I turn it to you? I see you next on my screen here.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Well, I mean, for us, one thing we're really focused on is to begin with, especially in the global south, a common problem we see is that people don't really understand the importance of gaining control over their data. People don't realize the value that their data has, and people don't realize, just how much insight companies and governments and institutions gain about them and, about communities simply from analyzing data. So I think to begin with, it's really important for us to get people to one, understand the importance of their data, and then two, to try and look at ways in which we can start allowing people to have more control over their data. A common problem that we often run into is that while it's easy to say that it's important to get people to understand it, there are so many nuances to this, and it's really difficult to explain it to people. Consent has for a long time been spoken of as so important in data sharing, but the way we see consent working right now, it's not meaningful, it's not informed consent, right? So we are looking at data stewardship models as being able to bridge this gap. So you have experts who actually understand how this data is used and the value of it sort of coming in and helping people bridge that gap. So, to sort of summarize, I think it's really important, as we see it, that people have some degree of control over their data, and as well as rights over their data as well.
Thanks so much, Vinay. Definitely these themes come up, rights, understanding, sort of transforming the consent structure, data stewardship, and, bridging these definitely important themes. So thank you for echoing this, from your perch as well. Next up, Christine, can I turn the mic to you? If you could have it your way, what does this look like?
Oh gosh, do we have enough time?
We do.
First, I would say. So first, I would say education and legislation are my two keys on really changing this. I think that educating populations and then working with legislation to really work through these issues around data and digital rights, right? These are humans that we're creating when we're looking at the genomics, right? We're looking at digital humans, and we need to have rights for those. But I also think that patients need to have agency over their own data. So if I'm looking at the future, the way way I see it. I'd like patient groups to organize themselves around the genetic data. I've talked to Alice, and you've had her here, where they're looking at mapping genomics, right, with ESRI platforms, because that's location based, and being able to pull from that. But then organizing patient groups around that data and really using a federated data solution to really, pull in their perspectives and use dynamic consent to be able to have these groups share their information with people, but with the option to pull back that data if it's being used improperly. Um, I don't know. There's so many other things that I could add into that, but really what I see it as is, with this being this new digital economy and data economy, is there is a chance for those people that, can't work, that have illnesses, to be able to really pull that information together and improve their quality of lives, and maybe even their financial situations as well. So I don't know. It's a long description of how I want to do it, and that's just the bullet points, but I'm done for now. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Christine. Really important perspective, and really appreciate you lifting these. And yeah, the devil's in the details of how we do this, but definitely um, super important. Uh, and next, as I see you guys on my screen, Lisa, can I turn the mic to you?
Sure. Thank you. I very much echo what has been said already. I think too that there has to be, when we talk about education, I think that there needs to be some level of collaboration within the education systems, because I don't think that most people, as I mean, this has been expressed already by Vinay, but that most people don't really understand what it means that they have all of this data out there. We sign consent forms all the time without really reading through the very, very fine print. And so for me, I think starting at a young age, because, kids get their smartphones at young ages, which already start collecting data about them. And I don't know that parents are fully aware. I mean, we set settings on our phones that is not about sharing information or this, that, and the other. But I think there needs to be a broader level of education, like I said, within the education systems, about what it means to have a digital footprint. And not just you have this, but these are the possibilities that the data can be used. So I think that's right now what I would want to add to this conversation. I'm done right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Yeah, education and also what we can do about it. Um, Heather, I see you next on my screen. If you could have it your way, what would you perceive as the most pressing issues that you want to surface?
Sure, thank you. This is Heather speaking. I also want to second a lot of what's already been said. I do think that there's a need for regulation. So, when we're talking about legislation and ensuring that there's the ability to have informed consent, I think that there should also be the ability to have informed consent and, as Christine said, be able to pull back our data as well if we wish to, but without being punished, and that there should be regulation to ensure that we are able to exist in this world and not consent to things, or to pull back our data and not be punished. So, for example, right now, if we don't sign away our data freedom, we cannot exist with any number of technologies that a large portion of society is interacting with. So we shouldn't be punished for not giving away our data or selling away our personal information. So I think that there needs to be regulation around that. And of course, I always care about communication and education, which communication is a part of the education process. But I also always want to caution that, as being, even though it's the most important, it's the number one thing I'm passionate about, it's not necessarily the most important compared to regulation, because we also can't put all of the pressure on individuals to be in charge of everything, to be in charge of saving the world, like we have done with climate change, for example, where it's, change your diet, change your habits, change, well, it's like we're not regulating larger companies that are creating more harm. So I do think that education and communication is extremely important for understanding how can we hold larger companies that are taking this information or are influencing our lives, how can we hold them more accountable, and what does that look like? And I'm done speaking.
Thank you so much, Heather. Terrence, if you could have it your way, what does it look like?
If I could have it my way, it would look very different. One of the things, first thing I would say is I agree with pretty much everything everybody else on the panel has said. I tend to think of it in a couple of ways. The first is education, really educating individuals that their data is an asset that needs to be protected, that they need to be aware of sort of their data positioning in the world and who has access to it. The second thing is legislatively, I think we need to clip the wings of the big data providers and really look for models that sort of change the economics around data to make it much more individually based as opposed to big data aggregators like Facebook and Google really driving the data economy. And finally, the thing I think about a lot, particularly given my involvement with healthcare and medical devices as an investor, is what can we do to enable a data space that allows anonymized data to be used effectively to solve all of our problems without giving away people's privacy and people's ability to move anonymously in the digital world when they want to. And I'm done speaking.
Thank you so much. Lots there. Next, I'd like to turn the mic to Gavin. If you could have it your way, what does it look like?
Oh, this question, there's like the short term, the medium term, long term. There's like this kind of line of moving from higher central system and articulating just how
Gavin,
that
we're hearing every few words.
to
I'm
determine.
wondering if you can
Oh
you hear?
no.
I know, right
Yeah.
when I got to you. Sometimes what it works is if you just like exit and come back in. I know it's not the ideal thing, but would love to hear all your words. So if you don't mind trying that, that would be great. And then we'll come back to you if that's okay. Okay. Thanks so much. I'm sorry about that. Can I just ask this panel, am I the problem? Because I just got a red bar
No,
saying
I don't
my
see you
internet
as a
is,
problem.
you're hearing me fine?
I'm hearing you perfectly fine.
Okay, just checking to make sure I'm not the problem. 'Cause I'm getting red bars like left, right, and center over here, but as long as I'm not glitching, please somebody tell
Not
me if I
this
do.
time.
Okay, good. Got it. Thanks. Okay, so next, I'd like to turn the mic to Manuel. If you could have it your way, what does that look like?
Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you. So the question of if you could have it your way is a little bit tricky here because it assumes there are many different approaches. And nobody wants to stand anywhere and say, "Hey, that's just the one approach that I have." But the fact of the matter is, there is actually it's a little bit like I don't know if you guys know this name, but Joseph Lister, his name, medical scientist and experimental psychologist from the 1900s. He's a pioneer of antiseptic surgery, and it's really strange to think about just that, you know, that before somebody insisted that nobody actually used antiseptics in surgery, right? I mean, something as simple as like hygiene and something that would seem super self-evident to people is to wash your hands seems to be sometimes just overlooked, right? But back in that period when medical science was still like finding its ground, you wouldn't inject, especially if you consciously could organize the ecosystem. You wouldn't be ready to inject multiple trillions of dollars into a medical science that would literally be like spreading plague and disease everywhere. Like you'd be a little bit more careful. You'd be like, hey, can we figure out exactly if this approach, one approach, which is the in terms of common sense. You have to look at it from a standpoint of common sense. And the truth of it, at least from my perspective, and I have truly been not just like literally the only thing I know, and the data question doesn't really, personally for me, the data question didn't come into play until sometime in like the 90s or something. But right now, what we have is what you can imagine is like we have no antiseptics and we have no guidelines for hygiene, and yet there are trillions of dollars being invested. And because we're not sure how really to evaluate the impact on individuals and on macro um, from a macro perspective, we just kind of like are sitting in these panels and just suggest throwing things up. But in reality, if you're a parent right now and or a grandparent or you have nieces and nephews, yeah, you should be extremely, extremely upset, like extremely upset, because most people come into the world and, well, not most people, everybody comes into the world practically ignorant of everything, and we have to be taught everything, and that's just the way of the world. And frankly, the Chinese in 2021, if nobody's been paying attention, they've made some serious decisions regarding the role that AI and data privacy is going to play in their society. And their society is, of course, far more conducive to the kind of design space that artificial intelligence is, and thus the destiny of data in that design space. But in the States and in Europe, well, Europe at least, GDPR has been a great thing, and recently they've been writing about they've been approaching the real impact of artificial intelligence with regards to the impact on sovereignty. But in the States, I'm afraid like it's kind of pathetic. It's really actually pathetic because um, you know it's not a question. It's really not a question of dealing you into the data economy, right? You are the data economy, right? So, so what you want to do is you want to deal your actual sovereignty in there. But I think this is where the gap happens, because if we could understand what that word means inside a cybernetic ecology, and I think I'm going to say something about that, that term, cybernetic ecology, because so the first cultural time perception shift is our understanding of like nature from standpoint of a calendrical system, is a true ecology where we're engaged with nature and we're literate of the environment. In that ecology, there's no real there's nothing in between us and directly planting seeds and raising crops. And in a literary ecology, it becomes a little bit more complicated. You have the worker kind of like dynamic where there's a dynamic between workers and owners of production and all that. And we're still having this discussion as if like we're not so far past that from a standpoint of technocultural paradigms and or adoption of the potential of technology. And so we're no longer in a literary ecology. We're in a cybernetic ecology. And the difference between uh, normal natural ecology and a literary ecology, which probably begins around, I don't know, like 8,000 AD and up into like the 1500s or whatever. But the difference between a natural ecology and a literary ecology for a human being, and in the literary ecology to a cybernetic ecology, is the difference between Columbus, coming to the Americas and man going to the moon. And yet we have no understanding apparently of what it takes to actually create a population of people and or a society itself that can integrate this kind of understanding and or let alone the design initiative, and let alone the actual trust in the engineering uh, um, aspects, which involves literally establishing institutions that are fundamentally different than how we approach knowledge gaining today. So I would just recommend that we, if we're very serious about this, to really open the gates of our imagination here and really penetrate what it means to process information, because we are swimming in it, right? We're swimming in an ecology one way or another. The question is, what is the nature, of the currents around us, and that's where the cybernetic aspect comes into play. And it's really a direct and black and white question. It's whether or not we want to live in a world where the individual actually has literacy of what's possible, or they want to, like you said, we want to be aware of our potential to just deal with it. And when we think about religion and like Christianity, it's really a coping religion, right? And we've been coping for quite a while on this planet with exploitation. And this one is not one that we can actually just try and literally kind of like wiggle our way around and see if we can win some sort of like lottery of capitalism. This one literally takes away sovereignty from a literal biological potential point of view. So I think that's it's important to really go into the true impact of it. Cheers.
Wow, Manuel, you're raising so many important dimensions, actually, that, while there's some parallel to what we've discussed, it's also, some new terrain as well. I want to catch Linda's input, and then I want to actually, specifically ask certain panelists aspects of what has been exposed in this first round. Linda, I want to give you the mic, and then we'll dive in very deeply to all that has been surfaced in this introductory section.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I think I have a stronger signal now, and I wanted to echo and encapsulate what I've heard. And as you've heard me say before, I feel very strongly that data dignity is an equity issue. An issue. It's part of a larger. It's part of a larger societal problem, because the way that we've been using or gathering, large corporations have been gathering data for the last 10 years or so, has contributed to this inequity, this huge inequity gap. And so I think one of the things that is really important to tackle is transparency and accountability. So, for example, the Algorithmic Accountability Act, I think, that was introduced by several representatives into Congress, would be a great step forward, because, this might be a cliche, but I think it's still applicable, is that sunshine is the best disinfectant, and that is that transparency is a great way of holding people accountable. And right now, there is just not transparency. So that's my that's my 2 cents for now, and I turn it back to you, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Linda. I appreciate that. Okay, so Vinay, I want to pass the mic to you specifically. We've heard lots of different aspects here, and I really want to understand, as you think about the work that the Aapti Institute is doing, and you guys are, deeply looking at these issues. Love to get your reactions, to what has been surfaced. We've heard lots of different things, including Manuel's um, analog here that suggests that we're in a non-natural system without the constraints of the natural world. So, Vinay, the mic is yours.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And I think I was really struck by something that Heather said was that, we also need to really be looking at the role that corporations are playing in the data economy because um, it's all good for us to talk about, well, corporations and legislation. So it's all good for us to talk about how, it's important that people get some sort of control over their data, but really, right now, that data is being held by corporations. And until the GDPR came along, most most jurisdictions were working with legal frameworks which didn't envision the world we live in right now. They didn't think about, how big a role data could have played. Um, and so, it was very, very easy for corporations to hoover up all of this data. And I mean, they still do that to this day. We're situated in India and we still don't have like a cardinal data protection legislation similar to the GDPR. And I'm aware that, the US doesn't either. So first and foremost, I think it's super important that there is some action, at federal government level to have legislation that recognizes people's rights over their own data to begin with. And in saying this, I'm looking at personal data. There's also the whole realm of non-personal data, the governance of which is a little bit more murky. But to begin with, it's extremely important that there is a legislation for recognizing people's right over the data about them, their right to know what sort of data companies have on them, know who that data is being shared with, and what uses that data is being put to. Because without this, it's extremely difficult for anybody to, you know, exert any sort of right or action over their data, which then makes it supremely difficult to have any sort of dignity over the data, really. And so I think that is a very important starting point. But what we see right now is that because of how, you know, long it has taken for governments to come up with legislation, and the corporations have been able to, I personally believe, lobby the governments to a level where it has become very difficult to have such legislation passed. And even if such legislation is being passed, it's in a much more watered down state than would be ideal. And I think the EU does stand as a bit of an outlier in this, but that's just my opinion.
Thank you so much, Vinay. Yeah, you're touching on first principles, and actually through the dialogue, all the core first principles have been exposited. Transparency, uh, consent, and actually data stewardship as an analog to take the burden off the backs of individuals, which is totally asymmetrical right now. It's not possible to effectively consent in the structures, and then real property rights, including both for identified as well as de-identified data. So I mean we've covered pieces of this for sure. I want to just come back for a moment here to the EU, and we don't have our European representative today with us, but I think the EU might say, or folks that are working at in the EU and on the state of their legislation, these core issues around um, ownership rights. I think they would say they haven't yet really crossed the peg on that. Consent, I think they're working hard, but still have the framework that puts the burden on individuals. And so I just like to open it up for dialogue. are we looking to to another place, or saying the grass is greener over here, but they really haven't licked the first principles? And I just love to hear perspective on that. I think I see Christine flash her mic. Christine, do you want to weigh in on
Yeah,
this?
I did. And I wanted to say too that California does have the Consumer Protection Acts, right? That are similar to GDPR. And in California, they're also working on stricter data privacy laws. That's not throughout the rest of the country, but it is happening in California. So I think that we're taking examples from GDPR, but also growing and evolving with that. And I think what it's taking, though, is going to be this global perspective on data, because now that we're in this digital world, we never had the opportunity to share data, it never crossed, borders or lines. And now it has that potential, so I think it's something that needs to be looked at globally, and not just in Europe, but looking at things that are happening in the in like the Middle East and in China and different countries and what they're working on. And I think it needs to be something that's a collaboration globally, honestly, because I don't think, we're going to solve it in one country over another. But that's just my thought in dealing
Yeah.
with, people everywhere else. So
Yeah, I think we've seen. I appreciate that perspective, Christine, and it's certainly one that's been echoed before here. Yeah, data is it's definitely fluid and it's moving among. I want to get to this sort of statecraft component. Terrence, maybe I'm going to turn it to you, and I'll specifically actually. Oh, just one second. I just want to make sure, Gavin. I see you came back. I'm wondering if we can test your mic and get you in on the conversation.
I think it's good now. Thank you,
Oh,
Elizabeth.
fantastic. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry that I missed you.
no,
I
it's all
want
good.
to circle back. I'd love to get your opening remarks.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Actually, it's in line with what Christine was talking about there. I'm looking progressively more towards DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, to kind of lead the way for best practices, because they're allowing a more localized community to be a lot more intentional about their sort of orientation towards preferences. And so I think that we're going to see a lot of evolution in this space that will be able to be a blueprint for global society, like a global kind of framework. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, since you're raising the DAO issue, I'm wondering if the panel has appetite for a little provocative question here, which is, what do DAOs solve really that we don't solve structurally? In other words, do we, are DAOs going to save us from our current governance structure? It's a little tongue in cheek, but I do want to ask that question because yeah, go ahead, Gavin. Please feel
It's a
free to push
it's
it
a
back right at
fantastic
me.
question. Anyone who says they know the answer in this space doesn't. Um, I'm I'm putting my mind to the test, and I would place my money on it's going to allow a less hierarchical system. So when you have more fractalized groups rather than a centralized system of governance, then the community members can see their actions have a direct implication to the community in which they're involved. So I think that it's going to incentivize people to take a stake, a more active role within, or participatory role within those DAOs. And we're talking about the educational process. Well, that will also incentivize every community member to become educated on, what are the implications of their data, for example, just down the list of all sorts of different, you know, uh, what it means to be a community member in this decentralized world that we're emerging into.
Thanks so much, Gavin. I want to, specifically, Terrence, back to you on. I think now just roll in the statecraft plus the DAO reactions.
I think DAOs are interesting, and I think there are a number of interesting things that are happening in the commercial sector in terms of data ownership and people being able to control their data in the commercial space. But one of the things, going back to the international point, one of the things I think is interesting is when you have state actors like China, where there is very little differentiation between sort of the economic life and the state life. What does it mean, for example, when a Chinese company wants to buy Grindr? And what are the implications of that? Because the data is the same, but the privacy and security context is now completely different. And one of the most difficult issues around digital privacy and digital dignity is that it is easy for me to imagine the creation of an infrastructure that gives people their digital dignity in commercial sectors. But when you look at sort of the power and the accumulation of data that modern governments have, it's a lot harder for me to imagine us keeping our government entities respectful of our privacy, given the huge utility that this data has for governments, whether benign or not. And I think one of the things I always like to point people to is the Chinese government social score, with basically tracking people's digital behavior and scoring them on whether they're good actors or not, and in some cases actually pulling digital access based on those behaviors. And I think that interaction between sort of the state actors and the commercial sector is going to become increasingly fraught, and I have not heard a good solution to allow us to keep digital dignity when international actors are involved. And given the state of international cooperation, it's really hard for me to see the U.S., China, and Russia, for example, coming together and coming up with a reasonable international framework to protect people's data. And I think that's going to be an ongoing concern as data collection becomes more pervasive.
Yeah, thanks, Terrence. I see Linda flashed her mic. Linda, do you want to get in here
No,
on this?
I was just going. Yeah, I was
Applauding.
applauding, but I also wanted to say, I hear that, especially we've tried. We're still struggling with what constitutes basic human rights, and I would like to think that we can continue the conversation with Russia and China about data dignity, relating it back to the whole issue of human rights, kind of take it up to a higher level. I don't know if there's anybody doing that, but it certainly seems it is worth the effort trying. So, anyway, I'm Linda and I'm done speaking.
Thanks so much, Linda. And, just sort of, pulling the tensions on the two sides. I mean, I think the statecraft is one thing, the commercial realm is different. Much of the conversations that we've had over the course of time, we've acknowledged the statecraft exists and sort of like on the map, there lie dragons. Like these are problems that are very, very hard that, seeing or anticipating governments, even our own government in the United States, but, all around the world, sort of willingly constraining themselves in the name of privacy. That's a very, that's a very complex organism with all the complexity of statecraft baked in. And then we have on the other side the commercial. And in the commercial realm, we've got this tension between decentralized structures and then the need for sort of this global framework, at least legislative framework that sets up the boundaries or the rules, that I should say the rules that, cross all the governmental boundaries, right? Would love to, if I may just sort of pick on Manuel a little bit and then come back to other members of the panel. Manuel, I'd love to hear your thoughts on these tension points that we brought forward.
So the tension points with regards to like international borders and what we can do on the scale is we have to just, I'm trying to be, I have to like get over like being coy at this point, to be honest with you. Like I've been at this for a long time, and I'm always trying to gauge at what level I need to like reveal information. But the international work that needs to be done from a standpoint of standardization is actually extremely simple. It's so simple it hurts. But yeah, political will. That's going to be that's going to be the actual scientific pursuit that we're looking to solve is deep how to get political will because it's money, right? It's money. The reason is why that's the reason the states is still cowboy land, and which is what is China what they did in 2021. If you're in technology and if you were building platforms in 2021 in China, you got a major wake up call, right? You you had a major wake up call, and if you weren't sure that you were living in a nation with a common thread as far as worldview is concerned, you became reacquainted with that fact, right? Because they straight up said, like, if your algorithms are going to be problematic in any way, your business is shut down. It's bottom line, right? They've put restrictions on kids playing video games. They've completely they've put in place guidelines in terms of like children and social media that most parents would be perfectly okay with, and I know I am. I mean, I'm not sure my ex-wife would allow us to like move the kids to China or anything, but and we're very very conscious about stuff. So I'm not saying that like we're prepared to live exactly that way, but one thing is for sure, you can't deny that they're taking a responsible and logical stance because they actually are approaching it like the problem that it is, right? It's as dynamic, definitely, and perhaps worse problem than COVID-19. Like COVID-19 is a good example of what it means to have this kind of problem and not know how to do. And we can't stay in the reactive space trying to handle it because we end up in kind of like a Zeno's paradox of never reaching any kind of real solution, but going in circles and trying to solve it. So one way that we can look at it, I would ask anyone who's absolutely committed to the difference to look at it as two ships. One of them is already gone, right? One of them is just the privacy ship, right? And privacy here implies that it implies respect, right? Because if you choose to use a platform online, then you're choosing, volunteering your data over to some private server, and well, all you can ask for at that point is respect that somebody will offer you. They're not obligated to offer it to you, but you can ask for it. And this is what I think we're dealing with today. We're still just asking for respect. But the companies are not interested in giving us respect because they're literally built to make money off not respecting. So it's that simple. But now that ship has sailed. So we can keep talking about it as long as we want, but it's sailed because you see what happens when Mark Zuckerberg goes to the Senate and he just says, "Yep, well, you didn't know that's how we make money. Oh well, see you later." Well, I don't know what to tell you. So that's the attitude, and that a lot of major companies have. I mean, Google shut down their AI ethics last summer because they realized the inherent paradox ultimately of having an AI ethics department when AI ethics is an oxymoron, right? I mean, so it's like going through the motions for public eye. It's not worth their time at that point because they know their utility is so valuable to the modern world that nobody will ever give it up, right? And that's the idea, right? We live in a zeitgeist where most people under 30 have this attitude of I'm on a floating rock and I'm paying taxes, so fuck data, right? So what am I going to do, right? But again, if you're a parent, then you're perhaps on the extreme end of that, right? Because like myself, like it's not about me. I for a long time before my kids, I completely ignored this, even though I'd been an IA for like most of my life. I completely ignored this because it was, for me, I didn't have a problem worrying about whether or not my sovereignty was affected. But when it comes to my kids and understanding human nervous system and realizing what's really happening, I have to be here telling you what I'm telling you. And so when it comes to like DAOs and distributed autonomous systems and blockchain, these are all giving us clues to the true reality. And it's important to keep comparing to China because, without the kind of like communal aspect of their society, blockchain governance does not make sense to them, right? But it does make sense to them because they have basic, general, united view on wellness, right? And nobody can question that. That's why they're able to make these drastic changes. And in the States, we don't. Because if we did, we would not have pharmaceuticals being the second greatest lobbyist money uh, paying lobbyists in the United States government. I've been to the United States Congress several times, and I work directly with law enforcement today about integrating IA into law enforcement. And law enforcement in the United States, obviously, if you're not worried about that at this point, then you're clearly not paying attention or don't care, right? So there's more than enough premise for a legislative stance, but the political will is not there. So the question is, what is going to turn on the political will? Well, it's the awareness of the difference between like that first ship, which is the privacy ship, which we volunteer. So we create something to debate, but we can't win the debate because we're volunteering our data. But it's the data that we don't volunteer that is still being captured and still being weaponized against our attention. That's the legal case that we have. But until we formulate it and accept what it actually means to discuss it and accept the worldview that allows us to understand it, which is it's no coincidence that the Chinese have taken the stances that they've taken because their worldview is ultimately one of the nature and energy as events, right? So they can look at these phenomena and see that they have just as much impact on individuals as literally pushing somebody in the back. But in the States, we don't do that. We have this kind of like, universe is container worldview where we give so much credit to free will, and we think ultimately it's all in the decision space of the person. And that's exactly what's being, taken away today. What that idea of having, cognitive space is threatened. It's literally threatened because we've created a petri dish for human experience that doesn't allow it to thrive anymore. This is not a so it's not a philosophical argument. This is not, and a philosophical argument is something that you can take and try and like write principles of laws to make sense of. But the reason if you look at my profile, I suggest behavioral biometric laws be put in place immediately is because that's the minimum, right? It's literally the minimum because the fact of the matter, we're still dealing with around 40 years of, designer and architectural design premises that are completely unnatural as far as like the impact that they're going to have on human beings. Computation as an art wasn't necessarily meant to create little digital smart TVs that we can talk through because all the metadata of that experience is being captured, and that's where the value is because ultimately the value of computation is being able to predict. So if I give you a little telephony box which you can call people, message people 24 hours a day with and take around with you, but I know computing, then the metadata is got to be the most valuable thing to me because I know how to compute. You know how to send messages back and forth. I know how to compute. So I'm always going to go for where the real power of computing is. And that's what we're giving over now to these big companies who don't even know that that's what they're doing. They're taking the full true power of the computing age and putting it against the individual and or human sovereignty. So I would I'm always like so like keen on reminding people that look at your like to think about your kids, your grandkids, and your nieces and nephews, and think about how impressionable their nervous systems are, because that's where you begin to cultivate the kind of conviction and honesty that will, you know, give you the courage and give you the compass to follow for what to do. Cheers.
Manuel, thank you very much. You've raised so many issues. I think I see. So, if you, from the panel, if you guys want to take yourself off mute, or Spencer, if you're trying to get in, I saw you flash your mic. Did you want to say something, Spencer?
I was just applauding that because I definitely
Yeah.
think there's like a certain level of the feedback loop that has been totally redesigned. You know, it used to be you would go and look at a billboard and it would be for your local dentist and you might think about going there, but now it's so specified and it hits on such a fight or flight response. And so I was just applauding that perspective.
And
Uh,
go
if
ahead, Gavin.
Sure. I'm thinking about I'm suddenly having this image evoked that there's like this ontological progression where data gets turned into information, information into knowledge, and then the final progression from knowledge to wisdom, and that these centralized companies have the capacity to contextualize data, right? Turn it into information and then put it back into the, have a utility to that process. And that kind of what I heard Manuel describing was that the layman lacks that capacity to even have that. And yeah, just being aware of that. So, yeah.
if I can jump in,
Please.
I feel like we're Manuel. I so hear what you said, and I feel like we're dancing around um, a little bit in terms of the issue of the free market, in the sense that um, we've given our consent to be in a free market society, but what does that look like? And what does the term free market mean? Because uh, a free market in traditional libertarian sense is anything goes as long as it's not illegal. But I think there's an ethical argument to be made that a free market should be more like a garden and it should be tended to. Um, that is, look at that we should be looking at ways of regulating this um, issues of data, because the way that it stands now with the free market, it is just helping to grow the inequality in huge ways. Yeah, Manel, thank you for, I think, the applause. And if you have a comment on that, that would be great. This is Linda, and I'm done speaking.
Thanks so much, Linda. And I think I saw Vinay. I don't know if Vinay, you flashed your mic and wanted to get in on that conversation.
Um, yes. First of all, I did want to applaud what Linda said because I completely agree with it. That the way we look at the free market right now has absolutely just increased inequality. But I did have something to say to what Manuel was saying, and I completely agree with his point on how the idea and notion of free will has changed so much with the way we work right now. But my input more was to a specific point regarding the political will to have some sort of legislation. What we're seeing in India, at least, is that you know, kind of bizarrely, the government or political parties are also waking up and recognizing the power of using social media especially to uh, divert conversation or push their agenda, so to speak. And for the government in power especially, they're finding it a lot easier to uh, silence conversation that they don't like and get companies to sort of push conversation that suits them. So I think um, this is, of course, a more case by case situation of different governments, and I would go so far as to say that India is not at this point not a properly functioning democracy. So that notion of the political will being there is also a bit nuanced. I would say it's not so much corporations versus people, but a corporations versus people versus a government corporation nexus.
Yeah, I think important, and I want to come back just to Linda and to Lisa on the ethics question, because I mean what we're really addressing is, and I can say from even dialogue that we've had, and we've had many different political folks that have participated, including folks that are working on legislation in the United States, in Congress, in various capacities. And we are aware that one of the big issues that Congress is grappling with is, it's so complex. To the points that have been articulated here, there's so many different facets of this, and creating the first principles framework, sort of cutting through the clutter. Manuel, I think you were saying it's so simple, it's painfully challenging to see why we're still struggling. But I will say that in our in the political climate that we have, the time and the energy it takes to really become fully educated and then develop the legislation, and never mind deal with the political fallout. I mean, right now big tech is definitely lost their halo. So there are some political opportunities, but getting that lined up with actual legislation that has been well considered and vetted through all the different subcommittees to get there. So I just wanted to sort of say that the political piece is one dimension. We haven't talked a lot about self-regulation with companies and the coalition of the willing, and sort of what individuals can do to apply literally political pressure, but on companies. Linda and Lisa, I'd love to hear your perspective. I know Caveat is working really hard, the Center for Applied Ethics. Linda, may I turn the mic to you? And then Lisa, I'd love to hear you weigh in.
Sure. Yeah, that is one of the things that this is one of the things that we are working on at the Center for at Caveat, and one of the things that we're trying to create is the Tech Ethics Review Board, in an effort to have a conversation between industry and academia to look at ways that uh, create a sustainable business. And I don't mean just sustainable in the sense of environmental sustainability, but more within the terms of a regenerative economy. And Lisa actually has been, thank her so much for contributing to the conversation. She brings with her the UN SDGs, I'm sorry, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which is one of the ways that we're looking at this. So, Lisa, I'm going to go ahead and turn over the mic to you.
Oh, thank you. So to further elaborate on what Linda was talking about the Tech Ethics Review Board, or Turbo, and tying it in with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, we're really looking at what does it mean to be ethical in the long term? What does it mean to show care and compassion for the earth and all of her, as was said in my bio, animate and inanimate objects, especially humans? And how do we intelligently or wisely um, create and set guidelines that corporations and possibly governments can direct themselves with that as the foundation. So when Linda was talking about Turbo, and Linda, is it okay that I kind of go down
Oh,
this
yeah.
road a little bit? Okay,
Oh,
okay.
absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So it's when new products or projects are coming to market, that they go through the equivalent of what would be an institutional review board, which is something within academia that is required when you do any kind of research that is using human subjects. But what Turbo would do is, instead of looking at research, or perhaps even looking at research, but as well as products or projects that are going to be new to the market, they get reviewed by Turbo, which is looking at how does this product, project, research, what is the long-term impact generationally? So what is the impact on earth, what our water security, how does it promote education and equity, how does it promote institutional collaboration, and really working together to create global solutions that are really rooted in ethics, transparency, care, and well-being.
Uh, thank
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you, Lisa. Yeah, just to add to this, institutional review boards are originally came out of the 1947 um, Nuremberg, code as a result of the atrocities of World War II. Now, IRBs are limited to human subject research, and they're guided by federal law. It took over 30 years from the idea for it to be implemented within institutions. And so this is really, really a long view. It's taking the idea of independent peer review to ensure integrity and applying it on a broader scale, and looking at the different standards that we might be able to use, that we should actually be able to use. As Lisa said, issues of worker equity, issues of environmental impact, issues of health and well-being, and the regenerative economy. And that, what we're hoping to do is, at least with the newer generation, what's coming up is to have ethics and values built right into the very DNA of companies, so that we don't, it's not necessarily, the companies aren't going to start off as, okay, how do we make lots of money? That it's going to be, how do we make the world a better place and enrich everyone? And how do we give back? It's a very different view than the traditional view. And if you're, I don't want to hog the conversation here, and I think we're coming up on time. But if you're interested in participating or being a part of this, as thankfully Elizabeth and everyone from Data Dignity has offered, please feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you so much, Linda. I really appreciate it. I know you guys are doing really important work, and really we're talking about, sort of ascending the ladder from the basement of, the bare minimum, which we do need the law and the bare minimum basement to come up, but we also, ethics sort of reaches for the heavens, right? It reaches for the things that are really, sort of distinctly good. And and the people pressure, all of us, consumers, all of, there are opportunities. That said, I want to do two things quickly, and then we're going to walk through final comments, and really with a focus towards like what's next, because I know we've descended into all the different crevices, or some of the crevices, some new today, but we want to also leave our audience and leave us all with like where we're going. Two quick things. One is a quick announcement, and then I want to give Data, who's Jonathan, an opportunity to say a word. He's been very patient. So first, just want to let everybody know that there is an event that's taking place on January 19. Julie, I think, is going to be pinning the details here momentarily to the top of the board, but on January 19, around this topic in healthcare specifically. an HBA event. It'll happen from 12 to 1:30 Pacific time on Wednesday, January 19th. So look for that pin here shortly, and you can sign up for that. And then, Data, I want to give you the mic, and then we'll do a closing round robin with the group. So, Data, the mic is yours.
Hey, thank you for letting me speak. Apologize for my tardiness. And I really enjoyed listening to the speakers since I've joined, and I wish I could have contributed earlier, but I suppose as it pertains to the topic, I believe that we have quite a bit of things to do and things to resolve here in the current climate that we're in. Let's specifically with our technology, as with our data is out for everyone to use in a way that they feel fit, and it is a complete violation of our human rights. And we need to recognize that. We need to truly understand, and there needs to be more transparency as far as the contracts that we're signing with OEMs, these product owners, with our cell phones, our tablets, our IoT devices. We need to get to a point where that we have full transparency in what they're going to be doing with our data, and it truly can impact everything that we are currently seeing. I say this because people talk about metaverse quite frequently, and this space that we're in now is actually a metaverse. We are in a metaverse right now. There are many metaverses, and what's happening with our data, even in spaces like this, is quite alarming. The data points that are being gathered on us right now, I think people would be shocked to know if they could actually see that. And it's my mission to expose these data points and let the people know exactly what kind of information is being put out there. The things that we may have been taken for granted before, as far as, well, we're speaking in a Clubhouse room, or we're on a live video feed on Twitch or YouTube. If we don't understand what's actually happening with that information and how it's being used in machine learning, and the comparisons that are being made between us and other users, and algorithms being developed, I think we're going to be in a very tough place when we start to see a decline in our data sovereignty. This is something that's so important. I don't want to take too much time. I think I just have so many thoughts about this, so many things in my mind. LiDAR is another thing that to keep in mind, that in our cell phones, they're constantly taking images. It's from iPhone 12 and above, and this LiDAR is always on, always taking images of the spaces around us, and this information is being sent back to servers. And although I cannot confirm they're recreating these spaces, but I know that the spaces are being gathered, and every point can be, and I've proven through code and tweeted out that the spaces around us, every quadrant on the plane that you're in right now is being recorded and sent out. I can imagine it would be recreated somewhere, but again, we have to understand what kind of data is going out, and without the full understanding, then we can be in a really tough spot. If something were to be recreated, and people just have a full insight into our lives. Thank you for the time to speak, and I look forward to your next Clubhouse meeting, and I appreciate everyone's contribution. This is Jonathan Scott. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Really appreciate you being with us. And sorry, I got my data, your name, my eye mouth coordination not fully there. But thank you so much for your perspective. And Jonathan Scott is a mobile security engineer and PhD student in computer science. He works for a crypto company as a mobile security engineer and teaches ethical mobile forensics to human rights defenders around the world. So you're most welcome. Really appreciate your perspective. I'm going to go in reverse order for our lightning round closing remarks. And I would just ask our panelists, to also speak to, what's the next thing that you think is most important? I think we opened with some of that, but would like to close with that too as we think about how do we move this forward in a way to create the world we actually want as opposed to the one that we're currently occupying in this context. So with that, Manuel, you're up first, and then we'll go to Terrence, and I'll just zigzag back to the end. So, Manuel, the mic's yours.
Thank you. I just wanted to piggyback on what Jonathan was talking about. Jonathan suggested that the sensors on the phones and how that the data that's gathered and can be leveraged to create the spatial web. And it's funny that you're bringing this up because this is actually, it seems new, right? But, we've been, so I'm 44 years old. Like, I don't really feel that old. I remember learning to code on DOS environment, and it was, and I could still negotiate with the true potential of computation from a heuristic point of view as an individual, and that opportunity does not exist for anyone born after the personal computer, and because the design environment completely changed her environment. So the spatial web has been in and coming for a very, very long time. So now with the sensors on the phones, of course, companies like Apple, you can't tie Apple to Pixar through Steve Jobs and not talk about the spatial web and not talk about even the movie that my PTR is suggesting, which is Tron, right? Like we have to start understanding that design space means you can only do certain things, regardless of how unique you think that thing that you're doing is. It means you can only do certain things within this certain design space. And we have all of human brain trust today locked into one design space and is literally the most dangerous one. Uh, so so it's a little bit really it's really hard to say um, what steps we can take, because we should actually stop, not take any steps, and then turn around. Right? But that's obviously super, super, super hard. So I do really appreciate Data you bringing up those key aspects, because there's a lot, and I've heard you speak before. There's a lot of areas, in terms of the telecommunications protocols that are extremely problematic and but they also bring attention to a kind of like the short-sighted problem, which is whether or not the points of access are compromised, and and but the core issue is ideological, it's worldview, and it's political, um, and until we can stop treating these existing mega companies as if they're like trying to be righteous, but hey, what do you know? We're doing our best. They are not. They are not. They are essentially responding. Yeah, it's funny because like you have to understand, if you put it in perspective, imagine, really think about the people who are taking care of the kids of the people in Silicon Valley, right? Like do you think really that, a migrant worker or something, or someone who comes into the United States who has been here and is just like a nanny to kids, right? Throughout the day, this is happening everywhere in America and in different parts of the world. But there's a whole class of people who do work that is extremely important, right? But the work is not valued. It's not valued. But because of network effects, you can create the dumbest thing, and the popularity makes it the most valuable thing. And then now your opinion is regarded as being solid because there's 5 million people following you on Twitter, right? And your opinion is going to, and you're saying, well, we think we're going to take some small steps to do this, and you're going to talk from that perspective because it is your business to talk from that perspective, but it is not your business to actually care about humanity, right? Because otherwise, you would be advocating for value to be placed where value deserves to be placed, and in that sense, we have to stop playing this game with these companies, like, oh, they could get better. They don't have a way, they don't know how. And if they did, trust me, they would jump on it 24 hours a day. Like, they would only do it. Like, Apple has every reason in the world to be the exact opposite of every major company in the world that depends on data, but they are following in the same footsteps because that's what they know.
Yeah,
And
I think you're speaking to the structural paradigm, which is so important. And Manuel, I don't mean to cut you off. I just know that we've got folks that will be leaving us soon, and I want to just get closing remarks. So, anything you want to say, just in terms of, I know your message is backup is the next step, and really be careful. If I heard you correctly, I'm gonna ask Terrence, if I can, and Manuel, I'm so sorry. You have so much wonderful things to say. Love to have you next time and to exposit matters further. But Terrence, can I turn the mic to you?
Certainly. And once again, thanks for the invitation. This has been a great conversation. I tend to see the world in sort of two buckets. I am skeptical that we're going to be able to introduce privacy at a reasonable level at the state actor level. And really, what I think we need to focus on is in the commercial sector, encouraging good behavior. For example, and part of that is legislatively, but also we as consumers have to start using our economic power. For example, Apple is being a much better actor in the privacy space and treating our data much more respectfully than any of the other major tech companies. And I think that we need to support them. And I think we need to punish people like the telecom providers that are trying to work around Apple protecting our data. And so really, I think the big battle now is trying to change the commercial incentives, starting to educate consumers, and really starting to move towards a peer-to-peer model of PII information, as opposed to the data aggregation model that has become so commercially successful and, in my view, so pernicious. But I do think that we as consumers can vote with our dollars, and we can also vote with our data. And that's going to require an intense amount of education and some legislative support. But I think we can get that done. But as I said, I'm a lot less sanguine that at an international level that we're going to be able to get government entities to behave well. But I do think we can change the commercial structure that our data is being traded in. And that's where I'm going to concentrate my efforts.
Thank you so much, Terrence. Heather, the mic is yours. Your closing thoughts. What's next?
Thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, I want to highlight again everything that Jonathan brought up. I've listened to Jonathan speak in several rooms. I highly recommend following him and listening to everything that he has to say, because it is true that there is a huge threat that we're facing right now regarding the access to information that large tech companies have and the way they're using it and the lack of transparency. It's an extremely opaque industry still, which is why communications, I think, is my passion in this matter, is to be able to get this information out to people who need to have it and get it out to them in a way that doesn't make people shut down and is able to help people engage with it. At the same time, I think that we really need to have better education amongst those who are in our legislative bodies at this time, who are not highly educated in what's happening, or might just be corrupt and they don't really care, because there is a lot of money currently involved in this, and the way that the business structures of a lot of these data mining companies are using. So I think that there's a pretty big mountain that we're trying to climb, and I find spaces like this to be pretty hopeful because we end up collecting like-minded people who are looking at it from several different angles, and we do have to approach this from so many different angles, but we really need accountability. We really need regulation and accountability, and we need to decide on what that looks like on at so many different facets. Like, now there's an urgency in that for sure. And I know that it was mentioned earlier that the political system moves really slowly as far as being able to educate the people in power who are able to pass the laws that make the change. That is true, but it can we can pool our resources together through communities like this to create something that can help with that process. So that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping to see a stronger alignment of people. I love being involved with groups like All Tech is Human, who are really good at bringing people together to create change. And I hope to see more initiatives like that popping up that are aligned with each other, work with each other, and don't take away from each other's visions. And with that, I'm done. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Heather. Appreciate that. Christine, the mic is yours.
Thank you. So many things that I want to say, but I can't cover all of them. But I do agree with what everybody's saying here. I think the education is important. And one of the things that I do want to say is a lot of these people that are collecting data, right, especially when we're looking at the health industry, a lot of the people that are generating data are these patients like me, right? Patients that have multiple conditions who may not be able to work. And this data could be the only shot at them having a real quality of life. And so I think that is something that we need to think about. I like to tell the normal humans that don't really understand data, and I attribute it to music, right? I like to tell people that my data is my song. And if you want to play my music, you have to pay me. And and I think that's one of the things that we don't look at. I'm a person on Social Security disability. I live in Silicon Valley. I did not choose to move here. I grew up here, and it's extremely difficult to live with conditions when you can't work. And so those are the things that I think that we should look at, is the data and the collective intelligence that people have could contribute to these things, and we need to inform them, educate them, and really make them realize the value of that collective data. And that's it for now.
Thank you so much, Christine. Appreciate your perspective.
Could I
Gavin,
say something to that, if that's okay?
sure.
Only because I know Christine, I know you're coming from a very, very good place, and I wanted to just be very straightforward and bring up what you just said. With regards to the question of the value of the information in the aggregate, right? There is truth to that, right? Especially in the medical sciences, because obviously there are universalities to extract. But from a standpoint of human behavior, there is no truth to that. But we're being sold that there is, which is partly why, we're essentially interested in selling our data, right? Because every major company is trying to create a Frankenstein of what they believe are universal truths so that they can essentially sell advertising. And it works because we're very short sighted. And the danger, of course, is that, if you're young, then you never get the opportunity to, you know, not be short sighted if they are so savvy of you, and algorithms are pretty much in every tool that we're using. So I think with Christine, what you just brought up is one of the crux of the issue, is the kind of realization that when it comes to computing, what you're ultimately dealing with is statistics as far as the value proposition. But with statistics, if it's not in the subjective view, you can't explore data for causality, right? Without the subjective point of view, you can't explore data for causality. You can only explore for correlations. And understanding that is fundamental to understanding why we have the power that we have as individuals truly versus what we, allow big companies to say and do. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks, Manuel. And I think that's that's a multi-sided comment, and one that we should definitely continue that conversation, because there's lots of different ways that we've been thinking about a marketplace that is being done to people and there versus done for people, and lots of different sort of economic potential that individuals and power, both sides. So definitely worthy of a longer conversation. I apologize for cutting it short. Gavin, I'm going to turn the mic to you for your closing remarks.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'll keep it pretty short. I basically, one of my ethos is rather than trying to feed the system, make, work on the alternative structure, and, eventually the previous system becomes obsolete. So I just, I'm pretty much fully in the camp of take the plunge to society 2.0, and, open source, decentralized, I mean, interoperable. um, it's all emerging into a less hierarchical, non-black box system. And I believe that, like, information should be ubiquitous. And as that becomes more and more prevalent, that, people's decisions and their ability to make, uh, informed decisions will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think that our legacy systems, we're seeing exactly what they do and what they yield. And I agree that it's like a big Titanic if you consider some of these countries, and we need something that's more agile and adaptable. So, just having the belief that we can develop something new and novel and more just, equitable, sustainable, etc. Is the 101 for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gavin. Appreciate that. And Spencer, I'm going to give you the mic.
Yeah. Final thoughts. First off, just like so much breadth of knowledge in this room. Um, I think about how many conversations we've had about data dignity and bringing it into the real world. And we're still having these conversations and still coming up with new ideas and hearing new perspectives, new individuals bringing up new pieces of the puzzle and thinking forward about what's next. I just think that bringing unity to some of these ideas, establishing collaboration between organizations and individuals that are passionate about these ideas, is kind of the way moving forward. Um, it can seem super overwhelming at times, but there are so many people in this arena that are doing great work. It just seems that the unity, the collaboration, the tent kind of isn't there yet. And bringing everybody together to kind of think about this issue and what are the legitimate ways that we're going to move forward seems like the answer, in my opinion. So excited to kind of keep having these conversations, but with the idea of bringing some relevant kind of product to this. I guess product is a corporate word for it, but kind of getting some answers and bringing forth ways to kind of change the system seems like the way forward. So excited to continue developing that. I'm Spencer and I'm done speaking.
Thanks so much, Spencer. And just to sort of add another dimension here, the dialogue that has occurred here has been shared widely, including our public Miro board, really expositing the ideas with U.S. congressional members, different legal scholars from all over the world. There's a substantial effort to try to take what we're learning and lift it into the places that need to really get more education, and also collaborating with a lot of other organizations. So just know that these discussions, while we might seem like while we're here, it's hand wringing and we're, talking to ourselves, that the reality is we've really tried to take and lift this stuff into places where we can actually see some eventual policy shifts. We know that's going to take time, and the ownership rights, transparency, consent frameworks, and structures, privacy, all these issues have many dimensions. So with that, deep thanks for our panelists and audience. Thank you for everybody's thoughtful engagement. It's been another exquisite, great journey. And I learned something, learned a number of things, thought differently, and hopefully we inspired folks to expand their thinking as well. As a reminder, I just want to say thanks to our fabulous team, Julie and Spencer, for making this happen. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julie to close us out. Julie, the mic is yours.
Hi everyone, Julie here. Just in case I drop off, I've been having several issues with the app. Spencer will take over for me. But in closing, I'm Julie, project manager at Consuli and host for this room and club. As we wrap, I just want to point out that I've pinned the upcoming event to the top of the room. So we hope you'll be able to join Consuli in the HBA, Healthcare Businesswomen's Association, where we will explore what is the data economy in healthcare and what does it mean for you. Find all the details in that link up there. In addition to this room and club, we host a long COVID and clinical trials room. You can learn more by following our club Consuli Conversations. Tap the little green house at the top. Check out our profile. You'll see all our upcoming rooms there. Also be sure to check out the profiles. Follow me, Elizabeth, Spencer, all our other panelists here today, anyone else in the room that you find fascinating. For any direct questions, comments, feedback, any suggestions, if you'd like to join our panel again or have someone you'd like to recommend for it, you can find my direct email in my bio. I love hearing from you guys. Give our socials a follow. You can also find those there. Again, for those that joined during our event and after our opening announcements and don't yet know Consuli, broadly, Consuli is a public benefit company with the mission to enable individuals to participate in the data economy. Experts do suggest our individual data is worth $20,000 per year. So we help people take control and choose who gets access to and how their personal information is used, and if and when desired, get them paid for their data and make medicine better. We do this by operating a marketplace for members where we become their agent. Our members receive smart-matched, individualized offers from us for opportunities, including to participate in clinical trials and data trials. There is no cost to join our movement, and you can learn more at consuli.net. That's consuli.net. Find that in my bio as well. And very much looking forward to the next Clubhouse discussion. This room has been really incredible and gets better and better every time. So hope to see you the next time. We'll be back in February. Leave a little music playing for those folks that want to poke around and linger and look at people's bios that are still here. Again, thanks so much for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your day.